All right, we're a couple minutes past 7, so we'll get going here. Thanks for joining the SABR chapter meeting for, Zoom call for the Pee Wee Reese chapter in Louisville. And I know with the SABR Zoom calls, a lot of times we try to, a lot more based around history and research and such. But I thought it'd be kind of interesting if we got a little talk going on about some things going on with current day baseball. So I kind of just randomly reached out to Mark Sheldon, who is the beat writer for the Cincinnati Reds on MLB.com. So I don't know if everybody on here is Reds fans, but if you are and you look at them, you've certainly read his stuff at some point. So I know Mark was with the Twins to start for a couple years, but he's been with the Reds since I think 2006. So he knows all in and outs about the game up in Cincinnati there. So Mark, welcome. Thank you for joining us for a bit. Appreciate you taking some time out. How's the weather down there?
You know what? It's a little cool for Arizona, but it's absolutely perfect for me. It's in this, it's been in the 60s. I don't think yesterday it got above the 50s, but it's been very pleasant. I can't complain.
Yeah, I can complain if it was kind of overcast and cold and nasty in Louisville. I think it's probably
That's
heading
what
up
I'm
towards
hearing in
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati
So
too.
yeah, so great time to get out of there. I know we got a couple members up in the Cincinnati area up there. So all right, so yeah, I'll kind of start with some questions here and there, but I'm sure we'll have some people want to start throwing stuff out. But to start right off with it, kind of want to get your thoughts on the big managerial hiring this year, Terry Francona. What kind of what do you think of that? And what do you think he'll bring to the Reds that maybe was missing before?
Well, it certainly was a slam dunk hiring. It was a coup for the Reds to be able to get a future Hall of Fame manager out of retirement after a year off, and what he can bring. It's kind of
Yeah.
debatable. Certainly, you wonder how much influence a manager can have on wins and losses. But you look at his track record. He's obviously won with a big market team like Boston, 2 World Series, but he's also won with a smaller market team and won an AL pennant with Cleveland. Excuse me. And the Reds, their roster isn't terribly changed from last season. But they have made some improvements. They're going to get some people back from injuries, and then you add a Francona to the mix, and you got to think at least that
Oh
they
yeah,
will perform better than they did last year.
wireless
Last year they
cook,
grossly underperformed, and I think
a little
I
metal
think what
cup.
he'll do is he'll bring a little bit more. He'll tighten some things up. I think he'll
Oh, it's
bring more
still the
accountability to
fluffy
the
thing.
group, and I think he will. I just think that his way of doing things, he just brings instant credibility, and he's a really good communicator as well. So I think all those things kind of in the mix do seem to benefit the Reds. And I'm not saying they're going to go out and win the division this year, but I think they have a very good chance of being above 500 and competing for a wild card.
Well, I mean, what 'cause he seemed pretty content on retiring a few years ago for family and such. So what do you think lured him to come to Cincinnati?
Well, he retired more for health reasons.
Right, yeah.
His primary reason was he's had a lot of surgeries. He's had a lot of illnesses, and I think he needed a year. He had a weight. I think he was overweight, and I think he used the year to take care of himself and to get out of it. Because obviously, this job I've never done it certainly, but it's a high burn, very stressful job. There's a lot on the line every night for managers. They're responsible for a lot of things beyond just baseball. And I think he's had 23 seasons total on the bench with 3 previous clubs. I think he just needed to get away, and he even said it today that he didn't miss baseball per se. Like he didn't miss the grind of the spring training thing, but he's either all in or all out. And he didn't feel like he was all in maybe the last couple of years with Cleveland, and that's what he knew he had to leave. And now that he's back, he's all in baseball. And I think with the Reds roster, certainly it's got its flaws, but there's a lot of dynamics on this roster that are likable. A lot of young players, namely De La Cruz and Matt McLean and some of those pitchers. And I think he feels like if he's going to come out of retirement, he has a chance to go to with another winner. And he certainly didn't come out of retirement to tread water or sit below 500.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of uh, who's the NBA coach that always every time a team got good, he kind of seemed to jump back in there and take over. I don't know if it's Pat Riley or one of them, but see, I should take a moment also say, if y'all don't mind, just make sure your cameras are muted. If you have any questions, you can put the raise hand icon on, or put them in the chat. We'll get to them in a little bit. So I'll try to make sure I get to everybody's. But you've mentioned so Mark, you've mentioned De La Cruz, and talked about Matt McClain coming back. And sorry, I obviously hit something and turned the light off on me. I'm still here though. But what do you think is the strategy with the infielders? Because it seemed like they were, they're kind of set at first. It seems like with Encarnacion Strand, they got Cruz at shortstop, but they're then they bring in Lux, and along with they got Steer already there, and Espinal and Candelario. So how do you think that all shakes out?
Well, I don't think they're set at first base with
Okay.
Encarnacion Strain. I think after a very bad first month and then the injury, he missed a whole season, and I think he has to show that he belongs in the big leagues. And I'm not sure that'll happen in spring training or not. We'll have to see. But I think first base is an open question. I think third base is an open question. And I think after last year, if you recall, they were in the situation last year. They had India, and they were talking about moving, McClain to second base and having India move around, and they gave him some looks at first base a couple times in a game. And then McClain got hurt, and everything had to kind of switch. And then Noelvi Marte got suspended, and then they had to go out and get Espinal because they were short of infielders. So I think when it comes to depth, they were definitely trying to find ways to improve defensively. I think we can, after what Marte did last year poorly at defense, Candelaria wasn't very good on defense. Encarnacion Strand is not known for defense. I think they were looking for ways to extend the lineup with a guy like Gavin Lux, but also maybe upgrade in defense as well. How it's going to look, it remains to be seen. There's still kind of some open questions, but I could see De La Cruz moving to third and McClain to short and Lux at second, and maybe someone like Steer or CES or Candelario at first, or they could have Candelario at third, De La Cruz at short, McClain at second, and Lux at first. So there's a lot of different parts right now, but I don't think they have it all sorted out. They're just going to use this spring training to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, in addition to the infield, a lot going on there. But what storyline would you say you're most interested in following during as spring training gets started?
I'd probably say the rotation, because it just seems like no matter which combination they go with, someone that's been very good for them in the past is going to end up either starting in Louisville or in the bullpen. And you look at the rotation, and they have currently 8 guys in the mix. It'll be 9 when Wade Miley is healthy and ready to come back, which is not till May. But you got Hunter Green, Brady Singer, and Nick Martinez are probably as stone cold locks at the top 3 spots. Nick Lodolo, I would say if he shows that he's healthy, he's probably the number 4 guy. And now you're looking at maybe 4 or 5 guys competing for the last spot. And that would be Andrew Abbott, Graham Ashcraft, Carson Spires, and Rhett Lauder. So that's 4 guys. And certainly Abbott, he's been very good for them for 2 seasons. Ashcraft has had his moments. He's been up and down. He had a very poor year last year and some injuries. Lauder was a sensation. He only got 1 stop there in Louisville, but he was great in the big leagues, and he was great at double A and single A. And then there's a guy like Carson Spires, who pretty much can do anything, and he has the ability to be a starter or a reliever. So it's going to be a tough call, because barring injuries, if they have all these people here, someone's going to have to go down.
Yeah, and I don't know if Lauder. We enjoyed having. We would love to have Lauder back in Louisville again, but I don't know if that's going to happen. He was looking pretty impressive there. And I apologize again for the view. It looks like I'm in the shadows, but I think my camera went on the fritz in the middle of the meeting here, so I am here. But kind of get we actually had a question kind of on for us on your journalistic background, actually, which of your many stories from either the Reds coverage or the Twins before that were you most proud of, and why? And what story are you most excited to tell about the Reds this coming season?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't know if I have necessarily a favorite story. I've had stories that I've enjoyed because it required a lot of extra effort or putting together. I certainly love breaking any news story where I'm able to be the first to have a story. But I think if you want to talk about like putting something together that really resonated, I did an oral history on the Joey Votto a few years ago that really seemed to capture people's it just seemed to get a lot of attention. And then I was able to track down people from the scouting side. I was able to track down Jim Bowden. I was able to get, other people that were around at the beginning of the Joey Votto era. And I felt like that was, even though it was an oral history, I never did one before and I haven't done one since. I really enjoyed putting that story together. I also did a story with Dusty Baker, kind of about his background and dealing with all the stuff he dealt with in 2012. And unfortunately, between when I reported that story and when it actually went live, he had a stroke and near the end of the season. So that had to kind of change the tenor of my story. But that was a story I remember being very proud of as well. Um, and certainly some of the times there have been stories that, of games that are won and lost. I can't give you the details now, but like sometimes when, especially in big games, 2012 playoffs come to mind, 2010 playoffs, and being able to write stories under pressure and trying to explain what happened. Both of those times were serious losses from the clubhouse and the mood of the clubhouse. I like opportunities to show readers what's going on inside that they can't see, and I hope I do that pretty well.
All right. Let's see. So getting back to Reds coverage, a minute ago you were going through the pitchers. You mentioned Nick Martinez. I kind of sprung a thought in my head. In your idea, do you think the Reds were expecting him to take the qualifying offer, or do you think he was going to walk in there open for the draft pick?
No, I don't know if they knew either way, but they were certainly willing to make that offer because they knew he might accept it. And if you look at the contracts that have been given to starting pitchers, 21 million is about the market rate, if not a little
Right.
low. So I think they made an educated guess that it was a low risk, high reward situation. They really love that guy and they wanted him back. And and there's really the risk is low if he came back, they get him for 1 year, and yes, it's a high price, but not for pitching, and they're not on the hook for a long-term contract. A lot of starting pitchers right now are signing for that AAV or
Mhm.
higher, but they're doing it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and they don't have to do that with Martinez. He's 34, and after this year, they're off the hook, so they're not going to be um, hamstrung budget wise for years to come, and that still allows them to have another year of depth that prepares in case Rhett Lauder wasn't ready, or when they wait for Chase Burns to come along and a few other of their pitchers, or even guys like Green and Lodolo who have yet to show that they can work a full season without injuries or anything like that. So that this Martinez gives them a lot of protection.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We had a question about some conditioning. I know spring training is just getting started, so you haven't really seen a whole lot of guys, in full going at full speed yet. But are you hearing anything yet about the condition of some of the players who were injured last season, like McLean or Strander, and some of I know you kind of touched
Yeah.
on the pitchers a little bit, but
Well, Lodolo, I was talking to him and I talked to someone else and he was sent off to work on his strength and his body. He wasn't able to do that the previous offseason. If you recall, he was coming back from the leg injury and he said he felt like a Sunday leaguer because he really couldn't do all the workouts, but he was he had to pitch and he didn't have the endurance. So he was able to do a full offseason of strength building, both in his legs and upper body. And I think that has shown so far that he's broken all of his previous strength records, like for grip strength and leg strength. McLean has been fine. I was talking to him the other day, and he's been he had the Arizona Fall League, and he felt fine, and the shoulder is not a problem. The oblique, he said he felt some of the soreness still, but not like anything bad. He's just kind of resigned to the fact that he may have to do extra preparation and care for his oblique before games. And some people have a shoulder that needs to get iced and heated. Some people have a knee. McLean might be the oblique, and he's gonna have to take extra care of that throughout his career, possibly. Christian Encarnacion-Strand looks really good. He looks like, I don't know how much weight you put into this, but he did look like he dropped some weight, and he looked healthy, and he looked lean. They were so happy with how he looked that they're going to give him some shots at third base, so he might even be in the mix as a third baseman again. Let me think of who else. Who else are you looking at to know about, I guess?
I think they're asking about the pitching staff a little bit. I know you kind of talked about Lodolo then, and so I think, yeah, and as you well know, a couple of years ago we had a bunch of those guys in Louisville at the farm team, and that was something else. McLean didn't really come up as a really heralded prospect, but boy, just from the outset of the season, we knew he kind of seemed to have that hitting thing figured out. He had some pop in the bat. But the funniest thing always was because we had De La Cruz there the whole time. It was to see them standing next to each other on the field. But,
Yeah, one's 6'5", one's probably 5'9".
yeah. But that was something else, and we had Strand there with
Yeah.
him too. So that was a fun year. So hopefully, well, and that would kind of lead me to one of my other questions. And speaking from the Louisville chapter, do you have any prospects in mind that you see maybe coming through Louisville this year we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Certainly, some of them you're going to know. Chase Petty, I think he came up at the end of last year for 2 starts. I would imagine he'll be a phone call away. He's been an impressive young starter since they got him in the Sonny Gray trade. He's a prospect for sure. In the bullpen, they had 2 guys in the Arizona Fall League. I think they reached Chattanooga. Luis May and Jose Acuna. They're both in big league camp, but I would imagine at some point they'll be in Louisville. Zach Maxwell, who you saw quite a bit of probably last season. He's a huge dude. He's probably the biggest dudes I've ever run across, but they really like him. He's got prone to walks, and he's still working on his command, but he had a very good year at Chattanooga before getting moved up to Louisville, and he certainly looks like he could be a big reliever for them down the road, and they really like him a lot. Tyler Callahan is a second baseman, left fielder, and they felt like he came into his own as a hitter this past year, and I would imagine he'll be at Louisville. I think he had a little bit of time in Louisville last year, so I think there's a few guys that you're going to see, and then certainly some of the starters who doesn't make the rotation, whether it's Abbott or Ashcraft or Spires, they all might be in Louisville as well.
Okay, yeah, hopefully some interesting faces see this year. Yeah, actually, I'm a Georgia Tech guy. That's where Zach Maxwell went to, and I remember seeing him play there. And he has a pretty good fastball. Even then, he was a little bit hittable still, but I'm sure they'll fine tune some things. I think he could be pretty good. Yeah, we had Ted asked about because the Cubs have made some pretty good moves in the offseason. They got Ryan Presley. Um, so he's kind of asking question, huh?
Yeah, Kyle Tucker and a few others.
Yeah, and Kyle Tucker. So he's kind of asking about, we're starting to look at some of the other teams in the division, like, how do you think the Cubs will rate the division, and how do you think the Reds might stack up to them?
I think right now that the upper 3 teams in the division are Chicago, Milwaukee, and Cincinnati. I think St. Louis is rebuilding. I don't know if they're going to even have Nolan Arenado before the season opens or not. Then you have the Pirates, who have the makings of a good team, but they don't have enough. I don't think they're deep enough, both in rotation and lineup. But with the Reds, as we talked about, I think they could challenge for the wild card. I don't know if they will, but I will get it. But I think they can challenge for it. Milwaukee, you can't count out. They lost Devin Williams. They lost Willie Adames, and yet here they are. They've lost people in the past, whether it's Corbin Burns or other people, and they always seem to find a way. Hell, they even lost their manager before last year, and they got Pat Murphy, and they still had a great year, and they won the division. So You can't count Milwaukee out. And then the Cubs, they finally they had a kind of a static roster going from 23 to 24. Didn't really change much except for Craig Counsell as their manager. And they basically had the same record. And so I feel like now that they've made some changes, they're very dangerous. They got to be the favorite because they've improved in their rotation. They've improved the back of their bullpen. They've obviously improved their lineup. Um, and they freed up some money even by moving Cody Bellinger, so they could add some more people if they need to. So I feel like the Cubs are the dangerous team. I know they got like an 84 win but from I think Fangraphs, and the Reds were at 77. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm buying the algorithm on that one, but I think that those teams are all going to be pretty close, and that's what it tells you is a bad week for the Cubs or a good week for the Reds, and that could upend that whole prediction. So
Yeah, absolutely. And gosh, I hate to say, sorry for any Pittsburgh fans out there, but this is about the 20th time they seem to be building on something. It's just,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, obviously, Paul Skeens, and they have another starter. It was Jared Jones, I think, and but then they just found out one of the guys they traded for, they were counting on, Spencer Horwitz, is going to be injured and may not start the season on time. So I don't know where they go. Certainly, Andrew McCutcheon's not going to carry them to the glory. As much as that would be a great story, but and hopefully he has a good year. Maybe it's his last year, but they have a lot of holes to fill.
yeah, I know they got schemes. They've got, looks like they got some pitching, but yeah, the hitting's just not there. So let's see. So we had another question with Terry Francona coming aboard. What do you think are some of the cultural differences you might see with the Reds this year versus how it was under David Bell?
Well, I want to say first that under David Bell, they actually had a pretty good culture. I think that was something that he really stressed on during his 6 seasons. The clubhouse was tight, and those guys had fun, especially in 2023. They had a lot of young guys come up together. They mixed well with the older crowd, and I felt like that was a fun clubhouse to be around. And I think that was, David deserves some credit for creating some of those culture changes that made the clubhouse good. However, I think what they in 24, I think a lot of things fell through the cracks, and I think also the lack of veteran leadership really hurt them. Um, the veteran leaders were the backup catcher in Luke Maley and a reliever in Brent Suter, and Jonathan India, who's still a young guy at the time and still is. I think he kind of took over a leadership role, and they didn't have Joey Votto. They didn't have
Yeah,
a lot of people that could maybe do those things. And,
makes
and
a
the manager
difference.
can definitely affect that, but I think a lot of times it's the players that really kind of make or break what the kind of clubhouse culture is going to be. But I think Francona, what he has though is he's got an easy way about him, kind of like Dusty Baker when he was here. Francona can relate to a 20-year-old. He can relate to a 40-year-old, and he can tailor his messages to either one of them. He wants to be an open door guy, and players come to him. He can come to players. I've already seen him making his way around the clubhouse a lot. Managers don't often mill in the clubhouse, but he hasn't been afraid to do that so far. And I feel like uh, he'll have a culture where winning is the priority, and I think that's something that he got a little out of the way last year. I feel like they spent too much time worrying about culture, maybe a little bit less time worrying about winning, worrying about accountability when mistakes were made. I think those were things that were one of the reasons why they fell short in addition to injuries. But I think Francona is going to tighten a lot of that stuff up.
Okay, and this came from people that kind of are probably follow a little more closely, but I think one of their kind of things they thought they saw in David Bell's managerial is he seemed to move people around a lot more and maybe didn't give players often a shot or just didn't really have people in stable places. It seemed like. Do you think do you think that was the case maybe? And if so, would maybe Francona do away with that?
I don't think players care where they play as long as they play.
Yeah,
And I mean, if you look at other teams, whether it's the Dodgers, they have guys that moved around. Um, I mean,
true.
Mookie Betts, He played right field, second base, and shortstop, and he's an MVP. He's a superstar. I just don't buy that argument that players need to play in one position and play in the same spot in the lineup every night. I think the game changed quite a bit. It's matchup based. You do what you can to get everybody in the lineup. I think that certainly some guys will be more static, but it's also possible in order to get a guy like Gavin Lux in the lineup, you may have to put Matt McLean somewhere different if Lux plays second base. It's possible that De La Cruz may have to play third base once in a while. It's possible that Austin Hayes may play left field or DH, or Jamer Candelario could play first, third, or DH. I think there's a lot of chances to move guys around in order to have the best offensive lineup. And I don't have a problem with that. I think if Francona will do whatever it takes to put the best lineup he can put together on a given night.
Okay. No. So Dix, I know you've had your hand up there for a while. Appreciate you waiting. Go ahead.
All right, thanks, Mark. Thanks for your time tonight.
Sure.
The only thing I'm sure the Pirates are going to be able to say all season is, we have Skeens and you don't.
Yeah. Skeens and pray for rain 4 days of the other 4
That's
times of the rotation, right?
As someone sitting near Fenway Park, a long way away from you, I have 2 questions. Is Ellie De La Cruz ever going to be the player that we have been led to believe he should be?
I think he can be. It's one of those things. He's only 23. He's obviously in the 3rd year of his major league time, but like you have to remember, De La Cruz really didn't have much of a minor league career. He kind of breezed through the system, and you're seeing a lot of raw talent there. He's prone to mistakes. He's prone to doing too much maybe at times to try to affect a game, whether it's with running into outs or making some crazy plays defensively and getting himself out of position. But I think the tools are there, and I think as long as you look at that, I don't think he's a poor man's Puig. I'll definitely say that, as I just saw pop up on my screen. But I think he's going to have to cut down the strikeouts. He's going to have to get on base more, and when he can do those kind of things, then yes, the chances are that he could be the talent that people are expecting. But as always, you have to play the games to see, but he seems to be trending in the right direction. I mean, I think 25 home runs and 67 RBIs in his first full season, or sorry, 67 stolen bases in his first full major league season is a pretty good place to start. Certainly 218 strikeouts is way too many. And if he can cut that down, maybe they're onto something.
My other question is the loss of Jonathan India a real loss?
I mean, I think that's a loss they can recover from. They certainly liked India, and I think that he was a well-liked guy in the clubhouse, but I don't think it's going to be something that they can't recover from. That was a good baseball trade if you want to look at it that way. The Royals needed a second baseman, and they need a little offense to put up ahead of Bobby Witt Jr., and the Reds needed more starting pitching depth. And I think that's kind of where that trade was. That was a pure baseball trade as far as I could tell. So but India was well liked. I'm not gonna lie. They liked him a lot, but I haven't seen people building a shrine for him and praying for his return either. So I think he's just one of those guys. It's a shame, but that's baseball.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Mark, we have a Joey Votto question.
Okay.
You think possible first ballot Hall of Famer?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, Joe Mauer got it on the first try. I feel like Votto is going to be one of those guys. He's going to test the numbers a little bit because he doesn't hit any of the what I guess the plateaus that people want to see. No 3,000 hits, no 500 home runs, but he certainly has a lot of other things, whether it's his on base percentage or his value to the team, his WAR. He's going to definitely. I would say probably not the first ballot, based on the fact that by the time he comes around, there's still going to be a lot of voters that are more from a previous generation, and I think it's going to take the current and newer generations to really appreciate that and vote him in. But I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think at the time that he played, especially for a 10-year span, he was one of the best to do it, and certainly he was one of the best first basemen in baseball while he played. as far as offense goes, and he's done a lot. I just think he's one of those guys that should be in the Hall of Fame based on his era.
Okay. Let's see. Michael's asking, any chance the Reds can sign Ellie De La Cruz to a long-term contract?
Given that his agent is Scott
Right.
Boras, who does not do extensions while they're in the early, the 6-year club control phase, I would say unlikely.
Yeah, you had me at Boris. Yeah, and I saw Russ was already shaking his head answering there. So, yeah, I makes sense for a lot of players. Yeah, you're right. Boris
And
doesn't
ditto
want
for
to
Matt
play that
McLean, if
game.
you're anyone wondering, he's also represented by Boras.
So that takes care of that. All right. So if the Reds can hang around the division lead or a wild card for half a season, do you think they would make a move to add any payroll space or maybe move a prospect or two to help the bullpen or other area of need?
I think they would. Here's the qualifier: if they have good revenue and bring in good money, and they whether it's through attendance or most likely attendance, I guess that might enable them to make those moves. So I think it certainly they want to win, and I think in the past when they've had opportunities to add. Actually, I take that back. They didn't add anybody in 23 other than Sam Maul, I think. So, yeah, they could. I think they will, though. I think if they have the revenue coming in, they could find space. They were able to add a little bit with the TV deal, and we'll see how that pays off for them in the signings they made. They picked up Taylor Rogers and Austin Hayes with that money. We'll see what they do with if they get any extra money in during the middle of the season. It all depends on revenue, I think.
Yeah, I missed it. I think I missed a question earlier. Somebody asked about do you think like Terry Francona can do anything to kind of sway the owners to try to spend more money? I think he kind of just answered that, but I don't know if you have anything to.
Well, I think he's one of those guys. He said it at his press conference when he got hired. He's the manager, not the general manager. He kind of stays away from the politicking for the roster. He leaves the roster up to Nick Kroll and Brad Matter, and he'll manage the team that he's given. But certainly, if he can affect a winning roster, I think that would speak for itself. If they needed a piece, that I'm sure they'd be able to go get it if they have the room in the budget.
Let's see. Alec was asking about the other coaches on the Reds. If you have any kind of, I guess, insights or any kind of thing you would want us to know about the coaches on the staff.
Well, that's kind of hard to answer, but I mean, J.R. House is a well-liked catching coach. I know he's also a third base coach. I think he's done a pretty good job. He's worked with Tyler Stevenson a lot over these last few years, and I think he's made some improvements. I mean, Stevenson still has a long way to go to become an elite catcher, but he's becoming a better catcher. You look at Colin Cowgill came in his first year, and he really they really love him and the way he kind of affects the running game. He's been the guy that kind of has been teaching the more aggressive base running they've been wanting. He's also their outfield coach, and he's also a guy that I've noticed right away that gets a lot of love from his players. They like him a lot. Certainly Derek Johnson works with the pitchers, and they've really enjoyed him. He's just a guy that is easy to work with, and he understands both the analytic stuff, and he also understands just human beings, and everyone seems to swear by him. So I would say those are probably the ones I can think of off the top of my head. And of course, I can't forget Freddie Benavides, who is been universally loved by infielders. Joey Votto credited him a lot with his improvement at first base when he was, from when he first came into the league and he became a Gold Glover. He credited Freddie for that. And a lot of people liked him, certainly. And if he had been manager, I think a lot of people would have been happy with that too.
Well, I'll ask a Louisville-based question here. How much do the Reds love Pat Kelly?
Very much. When he hit that milestone, the 2000 wins, I believe it was, somebody had printed up all these PK 2K shirts.
Yeah.
And everybody on the roster, even if they didn't play in Louisville for him, they were all wearing them. Pat's here at spring training. All the players get to know him just because he's on the staff, the spring training staff, and before they kind of break off into minor league camp, which is later on, but he's been universally loved. He's been in this organization, I think, off and on for 20 some years, 30 years, and he's just, everyone loves that guy. When a player comes to him and in Louisville, and they inevitably get a unique way of being sent up to the big leagues, when he calls an elaborate meeting, or he kind of does a little subterfuge or some trickery to ask a guy, he'll complain about a scooter, guys using scooters, then he'll pivot that the guy will need to bring his scooter to the big leagues or something silly like that. There's lots of ways that he can kind of tell a major leaguer he's going to the big leagues for the first time.
Yeah, I think the one for Ellie De La Cruz was pretty good. That was that kind of went viral.
Yeah, with his luggage, right?
Yeah. So that was good. Yeah, I think it kind of just shows what what I've always kind of said. If the minor leagues could just figure out ways to keep the same players there for a few years, just I think the popularity. Pat's been here for years, and we had Corky Miller for several years. He's kind of a he's still kind of a local legend in town whenever he shows up at events. So
another guy that's well liked up here. Even he's in camp all the time too. He works with the catchers until he goes off into the minor league side, and another guy that's well loved in this organization.
Yeah, good. That question: which Reds player do you most enjoy talking to, and why? And then I guess it's kind of two-part questions. Like, which one then do you think is the toughest guy to talk to?
You mean historically or on the current roster?
Russ, kind of current Red.
Either.
Yeah,
okay, I'll do this way. I would say all time the best guy I've talked with, the best two I would say are Bronson Arroyo and Joey Votto. Arroyo because he'll say anything. He's not afraid to talk. He doesn't speak in cliches. And Votto is probably because he's the most thoughtful. When he doesn't give flip responses. He doesn't waste words. He doesn't suffer fools. He when he talks, he actually has something to say. And I was able to develop good working relationships with both of those players. I'm still learning the current roster. I've been impressed with how Matt McClain has gone from a guy that was kind of a kid of few words, who's now seems very comfortable talking, very comfortable relating to people. Nick Martinez has just been wonderful to deal with. He's a guy that will do anything. He'll take the ball under any circumstance, but he also talks to the media even when he has rough days and poor performances, and he's not afraid to speak to issues of the club. And I think between him and Emilio Pagan, those are two veteran voices that are well liked in that clubhouse.
Yeah, I kind of, if I'm a Votto, I kind of wonder if maybe he has some kind of future in broadcasting or anything. Just, he's got that kind of oddball sense of humor, but he'll tell you like it is, and he'll just tell you kind of what's on his mind and explain things. So let's see. All right, Dixie kind of wanted to. I know he's kind of more northeast. Kind of want to see if you had any feelings or was feeling in Boston on the Bregman signing.
Honestly, I haven't. Other than I know that he agreed to the 3-year deal. It certainly sounds like that guy's been waiting for a deal to come along. I don't know if that's the one he wanted or not, but seems like the AL East always seems to get their players. You know what I mean? Whether it's the Yankees or the Red Sox and now the Orioles, they're all good. And I don't know who wins that division. My God.
Yeah, it seemed like gosh, I hope the Orioles' door isn't already starting to close. Seems like they were close and then they kind of took a step back.
Yeah.
So Michael wants to know has Castellini had any consideration about selling the team?
No.
Yeah, I don't think I guess. Let's see. Well, you kind of touched on it earlier. I think you mentioned TV. You mentioned adding some more money through the streaming service. Can you kind of touch again on how that?
Well, it's not the streaming service. They were going to go to MLB Media. MLB agreed that because of this when Diamond Sports went bankrupt, excuse me, and they weren't going to honor all their contracts. Some teams needed to needed a TV carrier to produce and carry their games. First, it was the Padres and the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, I believe, and then some more teams have joined on, including Cleveland, Minnesota, and then for a span, Milwaukee and Cincinnati. Milwaukee and Cincinnati ended up going back to Diamond under a new revised 1-year deal. And so the Reds will basically be on, it's now called FanDuel Sports Ohio rather than Bally Sports Ohio, but it's the same thing. It'll look sound the same as before, except with a different logo. And everything's the same. On the streaming side, if you subscribe to, if you don't have cable and you're just a streamer, there is now an option that there wasn't before, that you could stream in-market FanDuel Sports Ohio on the app and still be able to get games. There's a subscription price that hasn't been released yet, but at least it sounds like it sort of solves the in-market blackout issue a little bit. I don't think it's as dynamic as it would have been for MLB media, because MLB had it with no restrictions of any kind, and I'm not sure what the restrictions are for FanDuel, but if you're a cable subscriber or DirecTV, you'll be able to watch the games on the same channel you were watching them before. If you're a streaming person, you should be able to still stream the games, even if you're in the market or the marketplace.
Yeah, I've read several articles on all that. I still haven't quite figured it all out, but as long as I can, watch the games, we'll be all right. We kind of did a little bit of an introduction at the beginning, but actually had a question on your background. How did you get started in this business?
It's a long story, and I'll try to condense it. But I grew up in the New York area, about near New York City. I went to the University of Cincinnati and majored in political science, but I love journalism, and I kind of regret, in a way, not maybe pursuing a journalism degree, which Cincinnati did not offer at the time. But I ended up getting an internship. Or let me rewind. My mother pointed out that I wanted to be in politics and do a pre-law track, and my mom pointed out that I never spent any time in the law library, and she was right. And I ended up going to an internship at WLWT, the NBC station in Cincinnati, and I took to it really quickly. And my first night, I was covering a 3-alarm fire somewhere. And I caught the bug. I wanted to be in the business, in news. And then eventually I got a job at WKRC, and then back to Channel 5 at WLWT. And while I was there on the assignment desk, they were short of a person in the sports department who needed to go to Bengals road games. And I got to go cover Bengals road games as a field producer and be able to go corral players for live shots for George Vogel and who was the sports anchor, and then also do the interviews on tape in the locker room while he was doing the live shot. So I kind of got the sports fever there. I got to travel to Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, San Francisco, and Houston when it was the Oilers were there, and I just loved it. And then I moved from WLWT to ESPN. And I hated it. And I quit after a couple of years. And after kind of flailing around a little bit, I got a job back at WLWT's website writing about sports. And the owner of that website was not from WLWT, but a Minnesota company. And my boss at that company ended up taking a job as the COO of the Twins. And MLB.com was launching in 2001, and I asked him, could he help me? And he said, well, he can't because the Twins don't control their website anymore, but he could at least give me a letter of recommendation to MLB and MLB.com. And when MLB.com launched, they needed a writer in Minnesota, and I was happy to move up from Cincinnati to Minnesota. And I did that for 5 seasons. And then when the opportunity came to come back to Cincinnati, I jumped on that so I could come, kind of come home. I consider Cincinnati my home. And now I've been here since 2006.
Let's see, kind of along the lines of your, of writing for the team, someone who has to build relationships with so many different personality types, do you have any go-to icebreakers to help you build those relationships? Or
I don't know if I have anything
your
built.
personality just that magnetic?
I don't know about that. I guess it depends on the player, but I mean, I feel like I try to be personal and treat everybody like just regular people. I don't, even if they have a superstar come in on occasion, whether it was Ken Griffey Jr. when I first started, or uh, Votto as he became one, I always treat people the same. I've been lucky for the most part that I can probably count on one hand, pardon the expression, of turds I've got to deal with in baseball, at least both in Minnesota and in Cincinnati. I haven't dealt with that many bad dudes. Most of them have been good people, and not everyone's the most chatty guy. Some people are just introverted. They're just like everyone else. There's a society. There's some introverted. There's some extroverts. There's some jerks. There's some phonies. There's everything, and you just kind of learn to navigate your way. You try to just build one-on-one relationships. Sometimes you like talking to players in baseball. It's still cool is that you can still go in the clubhouse and have a conversation with a player one-on-one, whether it's on or off the record, or whether it's for an interview or just chewing the fat, and you get to know them and they get comfortable around you. And then when you do want to talk to them when it's on the record and time to talk, they may trust you, and they may trust you with their story. And I do appreciate the fact that I've had some longevity, and certainly there was a time when I was one of the younger people in the game, and a lot of the players are either my age or older, and they all were in the game before I got there. And now it's flipped where I'm older than all of them. Some of them, like, they could be my kids. They're at that age. It's just very strange. And I've been in the clubhouse longer than they've been in the big leagues, and I've seen players grow up and become coaches and all those things. So it's you just sort of, just by being around a lot, you do build those relationships. But I don't have anything tailor made or any icebreakers. No.
Okay. Really appreciate it. And we'll kind of start wrapping things up here. I know I get to some things, but I'll see if we have any kind of last questions. I just wanted to wrap up my questions. Are you looking forward to the Motor Speedway Classic this year?
I am. I actually, when I was at ESPN, my gig was RPM Tonight, auto racing. Believe it or not, I never got to go to Bristol. But I'm more of a Formula One IndyCar guy than NASCAR. But I think it's cool anytime you can go take a game into an unusual setting or something new. I've had the good fortune of going to Mexico when they had the games in Monterrey in 2019 against the Cardinals. I absolutely loved that trip.
Yeah.
I love 2022 going to the Field of Dreams games in Iowa. In Iowa. That was a moment that I'll never forget. And I have a feeling if they're able to get the kind of crowd they want, whether it's over 100,000 or not, you're going to see something you've never seen before when you see this game from Bristol. I think fans, it's going to be the first big league game in Tennessee, and I think the fans there will respond. I think fans from Atlanta will drive up. I think fans from Cincinnati will drive down. Certainly fans from Kentucky can drive down. And I think it's going to be a really interesting atmosphere, and I'm excited to see it.
I think it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. It looks like there's not going to have seating very close to the ball field from where I can see the stadium. I think it's going to be a pretty energized crowd, like you said. So
it'd probably be a lot like the Winter Classics, when they play a hockey game in a football stadium. I can imagine it being somewhat like that, but I know they're building some seating that's closer to the playing surface. It won't all be way far away. I don't know how they're going to do that, but I know I don't suspect it's going to be a mile away. I don't know if they'll look like little ants or not, but I think they'll try to get as many people into that stadium as they can fit. And the track capacity, I believe, is 146,000. I don't know if they'll get close to that or not, but it'll be interesting.
they'll pack it. No, I'm sure they will. So, all right, Bedmar, I will let you go. I certainly appreciate your time. You can't see because my camera's all messed up, but I have a smile because we've had a great talk. So I appreciate it. I hope you'll do this again with us sometime down the road. So appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I've never been asked to do this before, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and thank you for reading. I hope you guys can read and follow me on the socials.
Absolutely do. So. All right, we'll let you go. And yeah, Ryan, I'll mention that our group, we have another SABR chat coming up next month with author Eric Gray on his conversations with fans he's met over the years. So that should be good. So, all right, there we go. Appreciate it. Everybody have a good night and ready for spring training.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.